Hello, and thanks for checking out this video. My name is Zach, and I'm a lifelong reader and lover of all things science fiction, fantasy, comics, manga, personal development, business, and everything in between. And today I'm reviewing the latest book from Chase Jarvis, who's a photographer and entrepreneur that I've looked up to for ages. I used to be a wedding photographer myself, so way back in the day, he was one of the original influencers of the wedding photography / creative scene. So I recently read his book before this, which was Creative Calling, which was all about finding your calling and following your calling to be more creative. And I got tipped off onto that book because this book had just come out. And so I put a hold in, over the holidays, and it of course took a while. He's not a huge name author apparently in the wider world, but if you're in the creative world, or at least like myself, or an old timer in the creative world, and you were there when Creative Live was starting way back in the early 20 or mid 2010s, I guess it was. Yeah, you knew him, you know the name Chase Jarvis, and he's still around producing content. I check out his YouTube channel. He's thousands of episodes of his podcasts, his shorts. He's just a machine. And with that, I had to give his new book a shot. I somehow missed that he wrote books. I think I'd read the very first book about the best camera is the one that's with you, which was like the companion book to the app called Best Camera. But anyways, this is the newest book that just came out recently, so I got tipped off to this, and in that larger context, Chase's larger writing career outside of his creative career, because he was promoting this book on all the normal podcasts like the Ritual podcast and a ton of others that I see in my YouTube feed. So thank you, YouTube algorithm. But anyway, today we're talking about Never Play It Safe, a practical guide to freedom, creativity, and a life you love. So this is a book I really have mixed feelings on. So I guess as a critique of the writer, I can tell that Chase is improving his writing style from the previous book. He has some like tricks, and there's a format to the chapters where it's as to get into the review, I guess it didn't really work for me, but it might work for you. Because as I read some of the other reviews, as I was kind of lukewarm on this, I think I see a lot of people, at least on Goodreads, had very similar feelings. That if you are a seasoned personal development aficionado like myself, I've read tons of these books. This is really nothing new. And if you're new to Chase Jarvis, this might be all new information, because he does share some of his personal stories. But if you've already read or even know Chase Jarvis, you know these stories, so it's nothing also new for kind of lifelong fans of his 1,000 True Fans. So if you're a longtime follower like myself, he doesn't reveal any new secrets that he hasn't already told. He just kind of packages the standard self-help advice into a new book format. So if this is your first self-help book, personal development book ever, you're probably going to get blown away. But I feel this is the trend with a lot of quote-unquote influencer authors lately. I guess the other big one in the genre that comes to mind is Ali Abdaal, who, like Chase here, used a very similar format where he's picking a lot of existing works and referencing these works directly in this book that we're reading right now. So if you've already read the other works, it's just like a summarization of existing concepts. And if you're familiar with those concepts, I guess, yes, it's good to get that reminder that, hey, pay attention to this, that was a really good idea in this book, and here's how to use it in your life. So it is, on the one hand, I guess, like a synthesis of these influencers, these creators that have made videos on these topics, and they're kind of using that format of, here's an idea from a book or, a podcast. In this case, they're mostly books. And I'm going to take that idea, synthesize it a little bit with how I interpret it, and boil it down to like a chapter and put that in my book. So the book, Chase Jarvis' book, it starts with a lot of like, here's a concept from a book. Here's how to apply it to your life, sort of. So it felt very repetitive, and I guess just reminders of stuff that I already knew, nothing groundbreaking. And again, if Chase, if you ever watch this or someone on his team, I wish that, like he talks about at the very end of the book, that apparently he discarded the first draft of the manuscript and totally rewrote the whole book because he felt he wasn't being authentic. And I'm curious either maybe how bad that first draft was, because this didn't feel any more authentic. I guess what I was hoping to get out of this book, kind of in the vein of the previous book, of more of Chase as a person, not the regurgitation of other ideas or how he applied those specific ideas to his long career. Like he could have used like the chapter on Big Magic, which was, the concept of play, make room for joy and experimentation. This is a concept in the book that he references in the novel, that he's taking this concept of Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic and kind of applying this play to creativity. But if you've read Big Magic, it's the same idea. But he gives it in such a general way that it's not necessarily how he did it himself, which I think that's a missed opportunity. Or he, again, directly references, and this is a critique on Goodreads, he's name drops all these people that I think he probably had interviewed in his own podcast. He knows this. He's been around for ages, so he knows all these people. Great, but he's only choosing the big name people, which I guess is good because those are the people that, again, I recognize that, he quotes Ryan Holiday in The Obstacle is the Way. Great book. I love that book, but again, he takes the core concept of obstacles the way and uses it kind of in the constraints chapter, which I thought was one of the strongest chapters that resonated with both of me, because he finally talks about being creative, which is the whole premise of the book. So those few chapters, I did enjoy. I enjoyed the constraint chapter where he talks specifically maybe playing to his strengths as a photographer, like working in constraints of just using one color or one lens or one, constraint to drive creativity by putting a box on yourself. It forces you to experiment within that box and just get more creative. And it can be used as an exercise to break out of a rut or break through a creative block. And these chapters where I felt like a sliver of the real Chase coming through were what I thought was the best part. So there were definitely positives in here. That I did have some takeaways that, a few chapters. I love the time chapter and the constraints chapter. But unfortunately, everything else was, like he gives an example of how Steve Harvey failed when he called the wrong winner of an award ceremony. And like, it's a news article or it was an event, but it wasn't really, what was the creative tie to that? How is that Steve Harvey not playing it safe, like the title of the book? So I wish that the examples he gave were of people not playing it safe. I kind of, I guess, lost the connection here and there of where some of these big picture examples of like Oprah Winfrey or Steve Harvey or these, very common in the cultural zeitgeist examples where they didn't play it safe, but it wasn't Chase himself who he has his own knowledge. He, apparently, which he touches on, that, he gave up his career or early studies, I guess, in a PhD program. He gave up his soccer career to pursue being a photographer full time. And he goes into the story more in creative calling. And I guess better for worse, I'm not sure which way I'm arguing here, because he only briefly touches on it here. So he's not rehashing that same story of his like autobiography, which I felt creative calling. His last book was a little bit more autobiographical, but it's a story where he has the direct experience of here's how I never played it safe. And he could have gone into that more. Of course, the big elephant in the room is the whole Creative Live thing, which is his online platform that he built then grew as a VC company, and then they sold to a public company, and this whole turmoil, and we never really hear about it. So this is something that Chase has direct experience with that could probably apply to all this, or even the overarching theme of never playing it safe, and he could maybe use the levers of that, how he was more present in his time, or how the attention lever, what he focused on is what matters, which is just Essentialism, the book Essentialism, which is a great book by itself, but here's Essentialism and here's a chapter on it. Or the time chapter, which again was one of my favorites, where he directly references Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, which is a book I love that I got a lot of because it went deep on the subject of mindfulness and time and how to slow down time and be more present. And like that attention, that mindfulness is a common thread. He talks about its mindfulness, which again, the disorganization of the book, like he'll talk about the mindfulness in the play chapter or later in the book, not just on the time chapter, that he brings in his mindfulness practice later related to other levers. And yes, again, this is all like interconnected. Like you can be mindful when you're doing everything. But it was this weird dichotomy where it didn't really stay on track to just one specific example. He did weave through other ideas, and it just felt a little bit like a jumbled mess. That's why like this review is a little bit jumbled, because that's how the book felt in my head as I'm listening to it. And on the bright side, he does get to the point, and it is not too long. There's a lot of takeaways. And it's structured in this levers format where you have 7 levers: attention, time, intuition, constraints, play, failure, and practice. And kind of how each of those, again, not necessarily how to not play it safe, but just how to be more productive or a better human. So the chapters are all great advice. It's all good advice in the personal development, self-help genre of how to, what you focus on matters, which is essentialism. Be more present, that slows down time, which is the power of now, as he references in the book. Or intuition, listen to your gut, which is other books. Use constraints, and the obstacle is the way, which he references as Ryan Holiday writes in his book, The Obstacle is the Way, that these constraints can be part of the progress. Or, make your work feel like play, which is Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. Reframe failure as feedback, which is Carol Dweck's books, which he references Dweck as an inspiration for this book. Practice in general, be consistent and keep showing up, which is, again, he references Simon Sinek's Infinite Game, that we should be playing the infinite game. These are all great advice, but they don't relate to the theme of the book. So that's why I have, tough time recommending this especially if you've read other things in the genre, because it wasn't groundbreaking. It's just a synthesis of previous ideas, like Ali Abdaal just wrote about in his Feel Good Productivity, that at least Abdaal, he focuses on the productivity aspect of this. But this Chase Jarvis book, with the premise of never playing it safe, which is a practical guide to freedom, creativity, and I guess maybe it is the life you love. It's just kind of a general how to live a good life, because that's what the book felt like. Whereas I was hoping it was more on the lines of never playing it safe and being more, daring and creative, which is his brand as a creative professional. So all in all, it's a weird book to recommend. It's something I think I rate on Goodreads a 3 out of 5, because it's not that amazing, but it's not bad either. It's just kind of middle of the road, playing it safe. And the book is never playing it safe. So I felt he did play it safe and went middle of the road, general purpose, self-help, maybe hoping to break into new audiences. But, as he preaches himself in some of these creative, courses and his YouTube videos, that you want to play to your core audience, your 10,000 raving fans, and he has a dedicated following, and he's still putting out content. But maybe this was his attempt to widen that circle and kind of re-expose himself to the larger self-help personal development genre and be more known. So maybe there is an angle, there's a play to this, and he's going to follow up the second book or, third, fourth book, next book after this. So all in all, it was okay. Yeah, again, a 3 out of 5. Middle of the road. I probably wouldn't read it again. Read some summaries is nice. And I like seeing more of Chase, because I feel his story and everything he stands for, that comes through the mindfulness and the deliberate practice and creativity, like those kernels of things I aspire to be, that I see him as a role model for my own life. They're there. He didn't translate to book form. So maybe check this out on the Tim Ferriss blog, which he has a great write-up and a post, which summarizes everything you need to know in this book. It's got all 7 levers, which are the 7 tools, like maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger's tools for life, be useful. This is like that. This is Chase Jarvis's tools for a good life, but not necessarily how to not play it safe and be more daring and courageous. It's just how to have a life you love. So thanks for watching this long, rambly, like the book review of Chase Jarvis's Never Play It Safe. Check out the other videos, like for my previous review of Creative Calling, which was not too bad actually, because at least it stuck to the premise of finding your calling and being more creative. This one, you're going to play it safe for this middle of the road personal development book. So thanks for watching and have a great day.